Imagine the surprise and the heart-wrenching moment when a global icon like Shaquille O'Neal, known not only for his basketball dominance but also for his warm personality and sharp entrepreneurial instincts, finds himself stunned by the reality of his own business. Big Chicken, a fast-growing restaurant chain he holds dear, had always been more than just a business venture. It was a manifestation of Shaq's vision for delivering both delicious food and genuine care to every customer who walked through its doors. But one day, reports of poor service at a specific location left him questioning whether his core principles had been lost amid rapid expansion. Shaquille O'Neal is synonymous with excellence and hard work. From dominating on the NBA courts to becoming a savvy entrepreneur, he's built an empire by focusing on what matters most: people. Big Chicken was born out of this philosophy. It wasn't just about crispy chicken and bold flavors, it was about creating a space that made everyone feel welcome, valued, and appreciated. With its slogan, "Big Taste, Big Heart," the brand promised more than meals, it promised moments of warmth. Yet, despite the glowing numbers and expansion across the country, a few lines in a business report revealed cracks beneath the surface. Feedback from a Phoenix, Arizona, location caught his attention. It was scathing yet simple. The service was rude, inattentive, and lacked the heart that Big Chicken had pledged. Shaq couldn't just ignore this. As someone who values integrity and customer respect, he decided to investigate the matter himself. He called a meeting with his management team, expecting solutions or insights into the issue. Instead, he was met with dismissive excuses. The location was understaffed, some employees were new, and the occasional disgruntled customer was inevitable. These explanations didn't sit well with him. Shaq knew the problem ran deeper, and addressing it required more than brushing it off. He came up with an idea, a bold and unconventional plan. He decided to visit the location in person, not as the celebrated owner or the larger-than-life basketball legend but as an ordinary man, even less, a homeless man. The thought was as radical as it was revealing. Shaq wanted to see the reality of his brand through the eyes of those who might be overlooked or mistreated. Disguising himself wasn't easy. At over 7 feet tall, with a presence that turned heads wherever he went, blending in was nearly impossible. But Shaq was determined. He rummaged through his wardrobe, pulling out an old, tattered jacket, a pair of ripped jeans, and scuffed sneakers. He added a worn baseball cap and a frayed canvas bag to complete the look. Smearing dirt on his face and hands, he transformed into a figure society often ignores, a man who appeared to have nothing. Standing before the mirror, he could barely recognize himself, but he knew this was the only way to truly understand the customer experience at his restaurant. The next morning, Shaq arrived at the Phoenix Big Chicken location. Parking his car out of sight, he walked to the entrance, each step accompanied by the weight of anticipation and uncertainty. As he opened the door, the chime announced his presence. Employees behind the counter glanced at him briefly, their expressions indifferent before returning to their tasks. Shaq scanned the room. The aroma of fried chicken filled the air, but something intangible felt off. The energy was flat, and the atmosphere lacked the welcoming warmth Big Chicken was supposed to embody. He took his place at the back of the line, observing the interactions around him. It didn't take long to identify the problem. At the register stood Derek, a young cashier with an air of carelessness. Chewing gum and scrolling through his phone between transactions, Derek exuded a lack of professionalism that was impossible to ignore. Shaq watched as an elderly woman approached the counter to complain about her order. "Excuse me," she said politely, holding up a bag of food, "but this chicken is burnt. Can I get a replacement?" Derek barely looked up. His response was sharp and dismissive. "Burnt. Next time, check before you leave," he said with a smirk. The woman, visibly uncomfortable, walked away without arguing. Shaq felt a pang of frustration. If this was how his employees treated an elderly customer, how would they respond to someone like him, a homeless man with no apparent value to offer? When it was Shaq's turn, he approached the counter with a humble demeanor. "Hi," he said softly, "could I get a cup of water, please?" Derek glanced at him briefly, his expression a mix of disinterest and disdain. Without a word, he pointed toward a self-service water station at the corner of the store before returning to his phone. Shaq thanked him and walked away, his mind racing. He chose a table in the corner and continued to observe. The pattern was clear. Derek's behavior wasn't a one-time slip. It was a reflection of a deeper problem within the culture at this location. As Shaq sat with his cup of water, he witnessed more customers being subjected to similar treatment. A young man in line grew frustrated with the slow service and called out, "Can you move a little faster? Some of us have places to be." Derek responded with a shrug, saying, "If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else." The remark drew sighs and headshakes from other customers, but none of the staff stepped in to improve the situation or apologize. Shaq's disappointment deepened. This wasn't just about one employee's attitude. It was about the lack of accountability and the absence of the big heart his brand promised. How had things gotten to this point? As someone who had built his career on teamwork and mutual respect, Shaq couldn't understand how such behavior had gone unchecked. He stayed at the restaurant for over an hour, observing the dynamics and interactions. He saw moments of kindness too: a cook who smiled at a customer through the kitchen window, a server who patiently helped a family with their order, but these glimpses of positivity were overshadowed by the dominant tone of indifference. The experience left Shaq with a mix of emotions. He was disheartened by what he had witnessed but also determined to make things right. As he left the restaurant, Shaq reflected on the values that had driven him to create Big Chicken in the first place. It wasn't about the food alone, it was about the experience, the connections, and the sense of belonging. He realized that regaining the heart of his brand would require more than addressing surface-level issues. It would take a renewed focus on training, accountability, and fostering a culture of kindness and respect from the ground up. Shaq drove away from the location, his mind buzzing with ideas. This experience had opened his eyes to the challenges of scaling a business without losing sight of its core values. While the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, Shaq knew one thing for certain: change starts from within. And for Big Chicken, it was time to reignite the spirit of the big heart that had made it special in the first place. Detached glance, barely acknowledging his presence. "It's on the menu," he muttered, his tone flat and dismissive. Shaq nodded, suppressing the irritation building inside him, and turned back toward his seat. The frustration in the room was almost palpable now, with the air thick from the collective dissatisfaction of the customers. Shaq shifted his gaze to the kitchen area, where Todd continued to work tirelessly, the only spark of energy in an otherwise grim atmosphere. He moved with efficiency and care, ensuring each order was prepared with precision despite the chaos unfolding at the front. Todd's dedication stood out, but it also highlighted the glaring contrast with Derek's apathetic demeanor. A mother and her young son approached the counter, the child tugging at her sleeve with impatience. "Excuse me," the mother began politely, "we've been waiting quite a while for our order. Could you check on it, please?" Derek looked up from his phone with an exaggerated sigh, as though the simple act of being addressed was an unbearable task. "It's probably not done yet. I'll call them," he said, his voice lacking any sense of urgency. Without even standing up straight, he shouted toward the kitchen, "What's going on with the orders?" The mother tried to remain patient, though her expression betrayed her growing annoyance. "Could you please check properly? My son is getting restless," she added, her voice firm yet calm. Derek frowned and gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "You can wait over there if you're in a hurry." The tension in the room escalated further. Customers exchanged glances of disbelief, and murmurs of discontent grew louder. Meanwhile, Todd, overhearing the exchange, quickly stepped in. "Ma'am, I'll check on it for you right now," he called out from the kitchen, his voice reassuring. He wiped his hands on his apron and moved to inspect the orders. Within moments, he returned with their food. "Apologies for the wait," he said with a warm smile. "I hope you enjoy your meal." The mother thanked Todd, though her gratitude was tinged with lingering frustration toward Derek. As Todd returned to his station, Shaq made a mental note of the effort Todd put in to maintain some semblance of professionalism and customer satisfaction. The stark difference between the two employees couldn't have been more apparent. By now, Derek's lack of effort had not only delayed service but also driven away a handful of potential customers. A group of teenagers walked in, took one look at the long line and the grumpy cashier, and immediately turned around to leave. Others, already seated, were beginning to lose their patience entirely. One elderly man stood up and approached Derek with a firm tone. "Young man, you're working in customer service. You should treat people with respect. We're not here to be ignored." Derek gave a half-hearted shrug. I'm doing my job. If you don't like it, that's not my problem. His response only fueled the growing frustration. The elderly man shook his head in disappointment and walked away, muttering under his breath. Shaq, still observing from his corner, knew it was time to step in. Rising from his seat, he approached the counter once more. This time, his presence carried a quiet authority. Derek looked up, his expression neutral but slightly wary. Before Shaq could speak, Todd appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron again. Can I help you, sir? He asked, his tone polite and attentive. Shaq smiled and shook his head. I'm good for now, thanks. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Todd nodded and returned to his station, leaving Shaq and Derek at the counter. Shaq leaned slightly forward, his voice calm but firm. You seem a little overwhelmed today, he said, his words carefully chosen. Is everything all right? Derek blinked, clearly caught off guard by the directness of the question. Yeah, everything's fine, he replied flatly, though his body language suggested otherwise. Shaq tilted his head slightly, studying the young man. It doesn't look that way, he said, his tone gentle but probing. Do you enjoy working here? For a moment, Derek hesitated, as though considering how to respond. Finally, he shrugged. It's just a job. I do what I have to do. Shaq nodded thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. Fair enough, he said after a pause. But do you think the way you're handling things right now reflects well on the business? Derek's eyes narrowed slightly, and he shifted uncomfortably. Look, I don't make the rules. I just work here. Shaq gave a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Understood. But let me tell you something. Every interaction you have with a customer leaves an impression. And those impressions, they add up. They determine whether someone comes back or never sets foot in here again. Derek looked away, clearly unsure how to respond. Shaq straightened up, his demeanor still calm but now tinged with an undeniable resolve. I hope you think about that, he said simply before stepping away from the counter. Returning to his seat, Shaq resumed observing the store. He noticed Todd glancing over occasionally, perhaps sensing that Shaq was someone more than just an ordinary customer. Todd's consistent professionalism and positive attitude stood in stark contrast to Derek's disinterest, further emphasizing the disparity between the two employees. As the minutes passed, Shaq began formulating a plan in his mind. He knew that addressing the issues at this location would require more than just a conversation with Derek. It was clear that the problem extended beyond one employee. It was a reflection of a broader failure in leadership and management. The lack of accountability, the absence of proper training, and the toxic work culture had all contributed to the current state of affairs. Shaq's thoughts were interrupted by another customer at the counter. A young woman, visibly upset, was trying to get Derek's attention. Excuse me, she said, her voice firm. I asked for extra sauce with my order, and it's not here. Derek didn't even bother looking up. You can get it yourself. The sauce station's over there. The woman stared at him in disbelief. Seriously, is this how you treat all your customers? Derek finally looked up, his expression one of annoyance. Look, I'm just following the rules. If you have a problem, talk to the manager. The woman shook her head, her frustration evident. Maybe I will, she said before turning and walking away. Shaq watched the interaction closely, his resolve strengthening with each passing moment. He knew he couldn't let this continue. This wasn't just about Derek's behavior, it was about the reputation of the entire brand. And as someone who had built his own success on hard work, dedication, and respect for others, Shaq couldn't stand by and let this slide. He took one last sip of his water, his mind made up. The time for observation was over. Now, it was time to take action. The afternoon sun blazed fiercely, casting long shadows across the street as Shaq entered the Big Chicken location. He tried to keep his presence low-key, blending in with the usual crowd of customers. The smell of fried chicken filled the air, an aroma that usually brought him pride but today felt tainted. This wasn't just any visit. It was an unannounced check to observe the team in action without the filters that came with knowing the boss was around. The line at the counter moved at a snail's pace. Derek, the cashier, stood behind the register, his posture slouched and his expression indifferent. Customers ahead of Shaq shifted uncomfortably, glancing at their watches or sighing audibly. One woman politely asked Derek about the menu, but instead of engaging, he pointed lazily at the board above him and said, "Just read it. It's all up there." Shaq felt a twinge of frustration but kept his composure, reminding himself this was exactly why he was here, to uncover the cracks. When Shaq reached the counter, Derek didn't even bother to greet him. His tone was mechanical, as if every word was a chore. Shaq ordered something simple and returned to his table, his mind racing. This wasn't the standard of service Big Chicken stood for. It wasn't just about good food, it was about creating an experience that left customers feeling valued. Derek's behavior was a stark contrast to that vision, and it stung. As Shaq's eyes wandered, they landed on the kitchen, where Todd was working diligently. Todd's energy was palpable even from a distance. He moved efficiently, checking orders, assisting coworkers, and maintaining a calm, cheerful demeanor despite the chaos of a busy kitchen. Every action Todd took seemed intentional, as if he truly cared about every meal that left his station. Shaq couldn't help but compare the two employees. Derek's apathy at the counter was a stark contrast to Todd's dedication in the kitchen. Todd wasn't just doing his job. He was embodying the spirit of Big Chicken, a spirit Shaq had poured his heart into creating. The dichotomy was glaring, and it highlighted a deeper issue. Derek wasn't the root of the problem, he was a symptom. Something in the system was allowing this disconnect to exist, and Shaq knew he had to get to the bottom of it. Shaq decided to engage with Todd directly. He approached the kitchen, careful not to disrupt the flow of work. Todd noticed him immediately and greeted him with a warm smile. "Hello there. Is there something I can help you with?" he asked, his tone genuine. Shaq hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I'm really hungry, but I don't have much money. Is there anything here that's affordable?" Todd paused, clearly thinking, and then his smile widened. "Hang tight," he said, turning back to the kitchen. Despite the rush, Todd swiftly prepared a plate of chicken and fries. When he placed it on the counter, he said softly, "You don't have to pay. We're here to serve people. Enjoy your meal." Shaq was taken aback. Holding the warm plate, he felt an unexpected wave of gratitude. It wasn't just the food, it was the kindness behind the gesture. Todd's actions were a reminder of what Big Chicken was supposed to represent. Shaq decided to dig deeper. "How long have you been working here?" he asked. Todd wiped his hands on his apron, his face lighting up. "Almost 10 years, he said with pride. "I've been here since this location opened. I love this job and the customers. Seeing people leave happy with a good meal makes it all worth it." Shaq nodded, but he sensed there was more beneath Todd's cheerful exterior. "You seem really busy," Shaq said gently. "Is everything okay at work?" For the first time, Todd's smile faltered. He glanced around, ensuring no one else was listening, before speaking quietly. "It's been tough lately. We're short-staffed, so everyone's doing double or even triple the work. But that's not the hardest part for me." He hesitated, then continued, "The real challenge is some of the newer employees. They don't seem to care about the job or the customers. It makes things harder for the rest of us. I do my best, but some days it's exhausting." Shaq listened intently, each word reinforcing the gravity of the situation. Todd wasn't just venting. He was highlighting a systemic issue. The lack of accountability and support was creating an environment where employees like Derek could thrive while dedicated workers like Todd were left to pick up the slack. "Have you ever thought about going for a promotion?" Shaq asked. "You seem like you'd be great at keeping everything running smoothly." Todd chuckled, though there was a trace of bitterness in his laughter. "I've been nominated a few times, but upper management always says the budget doesn't allow for it. Honestly, I'm not in it for the title. I just want to do good work. But sometimes, I do feel overlooked." Those words hit Shaq hard. Here was a loyal, hardworking employee who embodied everything Big Chicken stood for, yet he felt undervalued. Meanwhile, Derek, with his dismissive attitude, was the face customers interacted with. The imbalance was glaring, and it pointed to a failure in leadership and oversight. Shaq thanked Todd for his honesty and returned to his table, the plate of food still warm in his hands. As he ate, his mind raced. The problems at this location were more profound than he'd anticipated. Derek's behavior was just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue lay in a management system that allowed such behavior to go unchecked while failing to recognize and reward employees like Todd. After finishing his meal, Shaq stepped outside, the Phoenix heat hitting him like a wave. He glanced back at the Big Chicken storefront, its shiny facade masking the challenges within. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The inviting signage, the mouth-watering aroma of fried chicken, but Shaq now knew the reality was far from it. As he walked to his car, Shaq couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Todd and the behavior he'd witnessed from Derek. The contrast between the two employees was like night and day. Derek represented everything that needed to change, while Todd was a beacon of hope, a reminder of what Big Chicken could and should be. Shaq's thoughts turned to the bigger picture. Derek wasn't just a bad employee, he was a symptom of a failing system. How had someone like Derek managed to stay on the team? Where were the managers? How had they allowed this to happen? The answers to these questions were crucial, and Shaq knew he needed to find them fast. The integrity of Big Chicken depended on it. Walking slowly, Shaq resolved to take action. The problems he'd seen today weren't insurmountable, but they required immediate attention. Employees like Todd deserved to be supported and celebrated, while those like Derek needed to be held accountable. It was time to realign the values of Big Chicken with the daily operations of its locations. Anything less would be a disservice to the customers, the employees, and the vision Shaq had worked so hard to build. As the team moved forward with their daily tasks, it became evident to Shaq that many of the ongoing issues were being neglected. Whether it was due to complacency, fear of confrontation, or simply prioritizing revenue over customer satisfaction, the leadership seemed content with turning a blind eye. Yet, despite the failures around him, Shaq couldn't help but reflect on Todd's warm and genuine demeanor. Todd's approach wasn't just about fulfilling his job description, it came from a place of authenticity, driven by a genuine love for his work and a desire to make every customer's experience memorable. Todd's actions stood out like a beacon amidst the chaos, embodying the type of dedication every company aspires to find in its employees. But this realization came with a bitter truth. Todd's contributions had gone unnoticed and unacknowledged by those in charge. As Shaq replayed Todd's words in his mind, it felt like a punch to the gut. Promotion doesn't matter much to me, but sometimes I do feel overlooked. Those words lingered, cutting deeper than Shaq expected. How had it come to this? How could someone as dedicated and inspiring as Todd feel invisible, while others like Derek were allowed to tarnish the very brand Shaq had worked so hard to build? The thought consumed Shaq as he slid into the driver's seat of his car. His hands rested on the steering wheel, but he didn't start the engine. Instead, he found himself staring at the iconic Big Chicken building in front of him. The realization hit him like a wave. This wasn't just about Derek or Todd. This was a systemic failure, a culture that had shifted away from its core values. Big Chicken's management system had strayed from its original mission, losing sight of the principles that once made it a thriving brand: kindness, dedication, and accountability. These values had been eroded by rigid policies and a profit over people mindset. Taking a deep breath, Shaq glanced at himself in the rearview mirror. His disguise, worn clothes and the guise of an undercover homeless man, was no longer necessary. The experiment had served its purpose. Now, it was time to return as Shaquille O'Neal, the leader, the decision maker, and the person ultimately responsible for setting things right. Change had to start with him. Not just for this location, but for the entire Big Chicken brand. Todd deserved better. The customers deserved better. And Big Chicken itself deserved better. As Shaq pulled out of the parking lot, his mind was already racing with ideas and plans. He couldn't afford to act impulsively. This would require data, insights, and most importantly, open and honest conversations with the people who had allowed these issues to spiral out of control. Shaq's determination grew stronger with each passing moment. He wouldn't just address the symptoms of the problem, he would tackle the root causes to ensure lasting change. Back at Big Chicken's headquarters, Shaq sat alone in his office, surrounded by files and reports that told the story of his company's operations. For the first time in years, he felt a renewed sense of urgency to understand every facet of the business. Not through filtered reports or sugar-coated updates from his team, but by confronting the unvarnished reality of how things truly were. He started by pulling up personnel files from the Phoenix location. The first file he reviewed was Derek's. What he found was both infuriating and disheartening. A long list of customer complaints painted a damning picture. Rude attitude, unprofessional behavior, cashier didn't make eye contact, and even instances where Derek had openly argued with customers. Some reports described him deliberately delaying service, leaving customers frustrated and driving them away. Yet, despite all these red flags, the words, "no disciplinary action recorded," appeared repeatedly in Derek's file. Shaq's frustration deepened as he read further. Emails from the customer service department to the Phoenix branch manager detailed the growing dissatisfaction among customers and recommended retraining or disciplinary measures for Derek. But nothing had been done. The manager's negligence had enabled Derek's behavior to persist unchecked, eroding the brand's reputation and demoralizing the team around him. Turning to Todd's file was like stepping into a different world. It was filled with glowing reviews from customers who couldn't say enough good things about him. "Todd is the best employee I've ever met at Big Chicken," one review read. "He's always welcoming and eager to help." Another customer wrote, "Todd didn't just help me pick my order, he made my day better. He genuinely loves his job." But beneath the praise was a disheartening pattern. Despite multiple recommendations for promotion over the past 5 years, Todd had been passed over every time due to budget constraints. He hadn't received a single bonus, even though he consistently ranked among the top performers. Shaq's heart sank. How could someone as dedicated and impactful as Todd be overlooked and undervalued? The system had failed him, just as it had failed so many others. Shaq decided to dig deeper into the management practices at the Phoenix branch. What he found painted an even grimmer picture. Severe understaffing forced employees to juggle multiple roles, leaving them overworked and burned out. Ineffective training programs left new hires ill-prepared for the demands of their jobs. And a lack of transparency in the evaluation process allowed outstanding employees like Todd to go unnoticed while problematic staff like Derek avoided accountability. These systemic issues didn't just affect service quality, they also eroded employee morale. Todd's unwavering dedication was a testament to his character, but even he had admitted to feeling overlooked and unappreciated. The more Shaq uncovered, the clearer it became that the problem wasn't isolated to this one location. The management structure itself had lost its way, prioritizing short-term revenue over long-term stability and employee satisfaction. Leaning back in his chair, Shaq felt a mix of frustration and determination. He couldn't allow this to continue. Todd deserved recognition for his hard work. Derek needed to be held accountable for his actions. And the entire Big Chicken management system needed an overhaul. Shaq began drafting a list of immediate actions. Each bullet point represented a step toward restoring the company's values and rebuilding its culture. Conduct a thorough investigation of conditions at all Big Chicken locations to identify systemic issues. Call an emergency meeting with regional managers to address the failures in oversight and accountability. Revamp the employee evaluation system to ensure hardworking individuals like Todd are celebrated and rewarded. Establish clear guidelines for disciplinary action to prevent problematic behavior from going unchecked. Rebuild the company culture by emphasizing the importance of kindness, dedication, and accountability. As Shaq reviewed his list, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future. Big Chicken wasn't just a business to him. It was a reflection of his values and a legacy he wanted to be proud of. It was time to step up and take responsibility for the company he had built. The following day, Shaq arrived at the Phoenix branch, not as an anonymous observer, but as himself. He was determined to have honest conversations with the team, address the issues head-on, and begin the process of rebuilding trust. Todd's unwavering dedication and the customer's heartfelt feedback had reminded Shaq of why he started Big Chicken in the first place, to create a place where both employees and customers could feel valued and appreciated. And now, it was up to him to ensure that vision became a reality once again. The enticing aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air, creating an inviting atmosphere in the store. Todd, as usual, was stationed in the kitchen area, multitasking with practiced ease. His hands worked deftly, preparing meals while still managing to flash warm smiles at the customers coming in. His demeanor radiated positivity, a stark contrast to Derek, who leaned casually against the counter with his focus buried in his phone. Derek's aloofness was impossible to miss, and it created a palpable tension between the two coworkers. The familiar chime of the door swinging open signaled the arrival of a new customer, but this time, it wasn't just anyone walking in. The room's dynamic shifted in an instant as the towering figure of Shaquille O'Neal entered. Shaq's presence was commanding, his sheer size and energy immediately silencing the chatter. Every eye in the room, from the staff to the patrons, was locked on him. Derek, caught off guard, hastily stuffed his phone into his pocket, the color draining from his face as he recognized who had just entered. Todd, still behind the counter, was momentarily startled. His initial reaction was a mix of surprise and uncertainty, but he quickly composed himself, offering a polite nod as he would for any other customer. Shaq surveyed the room, his gaze sweeping across every corner. Without raising his voice, he calmly declared, "I want to see all the staff here right now. Everyone, gather around." The weight of his words sent a ripple through the team. Todd moved quickly, summoning the staff from the kitchen. Derek fidgeted, unable to mask his unease as he shuffled into place. The employees assembled in front of Shaq, their curiosity and apprehension evident. Shaq stood tall, his presence alone demanding attention. The room fell into an expectant silence as his steady, deep voice filled the space. "Last week, I visited this store. Not as Shaquille O'Neal, but as an ordinary customer," he began, his words measured and deliberate. "I came here to see for myself what this place is about. What I saw left me disappointed." The gravity of Shaq's statement hung in the air. His gaze shifted to Derek, who immediately averted his eyes, unable to withstand the intensity. "Derek," Shaq continued, his tone firm but not unkind, "your attitude toward customers last week was unacceptable. I saw how you ignored people who needed assistance. I heard how you spoke to them with a lack of respect." Derek's discomfort was palpable. His head hung low, and he avoided eye contact with everyone around him. Shaq's voice grew more resolute. "Let me be clear. This is not how we do things here. Big Chicken isn't just about serving great food. It's about bringing joy, satisfaction, and above all, respect to everyone who walks through those doors. If you're not willing to change your attitude and genuinely work with respect, this won't be the place for you." Shaq paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "But I'm not here to fire you, Derek. I'm here to give you a chance. A final opportunity to prove that you deserve to be part of this team." Turning his attention to Todd, Shaq's expression softened. "Todd," he said, addressing him directly, "last week, I saw how hard you worked. I saw your dedication, your kindness, and the way you treated every customer like they mattered. That's what this place needs. That's what Big Chicken represents." Todd listened attentively, his calm exterior belying the mixture of emotions coursing through him. "Because of that," Shaq continued, his voice now carrying a note of encouragement, "starting today, you are the new assistant manager of this branch." Gasps of surprise rippled through the room. Todd's eyes widened, his shock evident. The other employees began clapping, congratulating him on the well-deserved promotion. Even as the applause died down, Todd's gratitude was unmistakable, his warm smile reflecting his appreciation for the recognition. Shaq turned back to the group, addressing everyone with a renewed sense of purpose. "This isn't just about Todd. It's about all of us. Big Chicken is bigger than any one person. It's about teamwork, respect, and doing right by the people who choose to spend their time and money here. If anyone here feels they can't align with those values, I won't stop you from leaving. But if you're staying, you need to be all in." Shaq's words left no room for ambiguity. His presence, his tone, and his message carried an undeniable weight. He stepped toward Todd, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. "Todd, I know this won't be an easy role, but I trust you. You have what it takes to guide this team and set an example for others, especially Derek. If you need my support, you'll always have it." Todd nodded, his humility shining through despite the significant moment. Shaq then shifted his focus back to Derek. Moving closer, he spoke directly, ensuring everyone could hear. "Derek, you have potential, but your actions matter. How you treat others matters. This isn't just a job, it's a responsibility. I'm giving you this chance because I believe in growth. But that belief needs to be matched by effort. Prove that you can do better, or this place won't be for you anymore." Derek's subdued response, a faint nod, did little to reassure Shaq. But it was a start, a small step toward accountability. Shaq turned to the team once more, his voice taking on an inspiring tone. "Remember, doing your job well isn't hard. What's hard is doing it with heart. But if you're willing to try, I'll always have your back. The room was silent, but it wasn't the kind of silence born from fear or tension. It was the kind of silence that signaled introspection, a collective moment of reflection. The staff, from Todd to Derek, stood with a newfound sense of purpose, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Shaq's towering figure seemed to fill the room as he scanned the faces of the team one last time. His message had landed, and his presence had left an indelible mark. Without further words, he turned and exited the store, leaving behind a team that, for the first time in a long time, felt united in their mission to make Big Chicken more than just a restaurant. Not just for the store but for the team, everyone here had potential if guided correctly. Shaq was confident of that. With a reassuring smile, he nodded at Todd's words. Todd's response wasn't mere lip service, it echoed Shaq's own principles. He had taken a leap of faith when deciding to step in personally, and Todd's demeanor validated his belief. This wasn't about assigning blame, it was about cultivating a culture where people could thrive. Shaq's vision wasn't just about one location, it was about an ethos he wanted to embed in every Big Chicken outlet. Before ending the meeting, Shaq outlined sweeping changes that he believed would reshape not only the store but the entire company. His first announcement was about staffing. He emphasized the need for reinforcements, promising additional hires to alleviate the immense pressure the current team faced. Overworked employees made mistakes, and mistakes led to dissatisfaction. By adding more hands on deck, the workload could be distributed evenly, reducing stress and boosting morale. The second change was about training, a critical element often overlooked. Shaq envisioned a program that wasn't just a generic introduction but a meaningful, hands-on learning experience. This initiative would emphasize communication, teamwork, and customer service, tailored to equip employees with the tools they needed to excel. Derek's struggles were a glaring example of how a lack of guidance could lead to friction, not just with customers but within the team. The third announcement was the introduction of a rewards system. Shaq acknowledged the silent frustration of employees like Todd, who gave their all but felt unseen. High-performing employees would not only be praised but tangibly rewarded. Incentives, bonuses, and public acknowledgement were set to become staples of the Big Chicken culture. Shaq explained that fostering a culture of recognition wasn't just about handing out rewards, it was about making every team member feel valued. These changes aren't just to fix what's broken, Shaq told the team, but to build something stronger, something sustainable. His words resonated deeply. Everyone in that room could sense the genuine intention behind his decisions. Shaq wasn't there to micromanage, he was there to inspire. As Shaq departed, the energy in the room shifted. Todd, newly emboldened by the meeting, wasted no time in extending a hand to Derek. The air of tension between them hadn't disappeared, but Todd's approach was measured and sincere. He engaged Derek in conversations, attempting to find common ground and guide him. Derek, on the other hand, appeared wary but receptive. The combined pressure of Shaq's intervention and the renewed support from his colleagues nudged him toward self-reflection. He realized that continuing with the same attitude was no longer an option. For the first time in weeks, Derek tried to put in some effort. The change was subtle. He started responding to customers with a touch more enthusiasm and worked more attentively alongside Todd. His colleagues noticed, and while no one expected an overnight transformation, the small shift was promising. The team began to see Derek less as an obstacle and more as a work in progress. Todd, ever patient, encouraged Derek at every opportunity. One step at a time, he told him after a particularly hectic shift. "You're doing better." Driving away, Shaq allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Change wasn't easy, nor was it instantaneous, but the seeds had been planted. He knew this journey wasn't just about improving one store, it was about redefining the core of Big Chicken's operations. This experience was a reminder of the delicate balance between leadership, accountability, and empathy. He couldn't afford to let this be an isolated success. The lessons from Phoenix needed to cascade across the company. Returning to headquarters, Shaq wasted no time. He convened his senior management team and shared his vision for comprehensive reforms. Together, they developed a training program that went beyond surface-level fixes. The program incorporated interactive workshops, real-world simulations, and role-playing exercises. Employees would learn to navigate challenging customer interactions, manage high-pressure shifts, and collaborate effectively as a team. More importantly, kindness, respect, and sincerity were positioned as the cornerstone of their service philosophy. Good food is important, Shaq reminded his team, but what truly matters is how we make people feel. A smile, a genuine thank you, those are the things people remember. These principles became the foundation of the training curriculum, reinforced by real-life examples, including stories from Shaq's own journey. He made it a point to attend some of these sessions personally, sharing anecdotes and engaging with employees. He recounted the events at Phoenix with candor, using Derek as an example of what needed improvement and Todd as a beacon of what to emulate. Beyond training, Shaq introduced an anonymous feedback system, a bold move aimed at fostering transparency and trust. Employees were given a platform to voice their concerns without fear of reprisal, while customers could share their experiences to help improve service quality. This system became a critical tool for addressing issues proactively, ensuring that no complaint went unheard. Every piece of feedback was reviewed and responded to within 48 hours, a testament to Shaq's commitment to listening and acting swiftly. Recognition became another pillar of Shaq's reform strategy. The employee recognition program celebrated those who went above and beyond, providing financial incentives, public acknowledgement, and unique rewards. The Big Chicken Hero initiative was launched, spotlighting exceptional employees who exemplified the company's values. Todd was the first recipient of this prestigious honor. A video capturing his dedication and efforts to mentor Derek went viral, serving as a source of inspiration across the organization. Meanwhile, back at the Phoenix branch, progress was slow but steady. Under Todd's mentorship, Derek began to show genuine effort. One evening, during a particularly busy shift, Derek surprised everyone by apologizing to a customer for a delay and even offering assistance with their order. Todd, witnessing this rare moment of initiative, gave Derek a quiet nod of approval. It was a small victory but one that signaled the potential for growth. Shaq continued to monitor the branch closely, providing support and encouragement from a distance. He knew that change required time and perseverance. Challenges would arise, and setbacks were inevitable, but the foundations were being laid for a culture that prioritized people over profits. In meetings with his leadership team, Shaq reiterated the importance of leading with empathy and setting an example. "We're not just running a business," he said, "we're building something bigger, a community where every person feels valued." As these reforms took root, the atmosphere across Big Chicken began to shift. Employees felt more motivated, customers noticed improved service, and the company's reputation steadily grew stronger. While there was still much work to be done, the strides made in Phoenix served as a powerful reminder of what was possible when leadership combined vision with action. Shaq's determination to transform Big Chicken into a model of excellence remained unwavering, fueled by the belief that even the smallest changes could have a profound impact. The Big Chicken store in Phoenix underwent a transformation that seemed almost improbable under Todd's dedicated leadership. Derek, an employee who once embodied negativity and indifference, began a remarkable journey of personal growth and change. In the beginning, Derek's progress was slow, almost painfully so. His reluctance was evident, but Todd's unwavering patience and empathetic approach proved to be the catalyst for Derek's gradual realization of his own responsibility and the value of the work he was doing. Todd had an exceptional ability to see past Derek's outward behavior. He recognized that Derek wasn't inherently a bad person. Rather, he was someone who had been let down by a system that failed to nurture or motivate him. Instead of opting for reprimands or criticism, Todd chose to guide Derek with simple, practical advice rooted in his own experiences. One morning, while Derek appeared visibly flustered trying to assist an elderly customer, Todd approached him with a calm demeanor and said, "Derek, try this. Before you respond, take 3 seconds to smile and look the customer in the eye. It'll help them feel more comfortable, and I promise the conversation will go smoother." Derek hesitated but decided to give Todd's advice a shot. Instead of delivering a brusque reply, he managed a faint smile and said, "Let me check that order for you, ma'am. Please give me just a moment." The elderly customer's expression softened immediately. She smiled back and thanked Derek for his politeness. As she walked away, Todd gently patted Derek on the shoulder and said, "See? Not as hard as you thought, right?" For the first time, Derek felt a small sense of pride. He realized that even small gestures could create a big impact. But Todd's mentorship didn't stop with customer interactions. He also showed Derek the importance of contributing to the team's morale and spirit. During a particularly busy shift, Todd was seen helping a colleague carry boxes into the stockroom. Without prompting, Derek stepped in and said, "Let me give you a hand." Todd simply nodded, and they worked side by side. After they finished, Todd turned to Derek and said, "That's exactly what I want to see from you. A strong team is built when everyone's willing to support each other." "You did well." Derek began to understand that improvement wasn't just about how he interacted with customers but also about how he engaged with his coworkers. His transformation wasn't superficial, it was authentic and rooted in a newfound appreciation for teamwork and collaboration. Gradually, Derek started to find meaning in a job he had once viewed as burdensome. His positive changes not only improved his own image but also began to influence the entire team at the Phoenix store. Coworkers who had previously been unmotivated or disillusioned started noticing Derek's transformation. Some thought to themselves, "If Derek can change, maybe I can too." Derek, once considered the weak link by his colleagues, slowly became someone they could rely on. One evening, during a particularly hectic shift when orders were piling up, Derek surprised everyone by stepping into the kitchen to help Todd fry chicken. Jason, a younger coworker, observed this and said to Todd, "I never thought Derek would step into the kitchen. I figured he was just a front counter guy." Todd chuckled and replied, "That's the power of choosing to change. Everyone has potential, Jason. Sometimes, they just need the right opportunity to see it for themselves." Derek's transformation became a lesson not just for him but also an inspiration for the entire team. The positive energy radiated outward, and the store's performance began to improve. Service became faster, and customer satisfaction rose notably. One day, Shaquille O'Neal made another unexpected visit to the Phoenix store. This time, he wasn't in disguise. Dressed casually, his radiant smile lit up the room. Derek was the first to greet him. With a warm, genuine smile, Derek said, "Welcome back, Mr. Shaq. How can I help you today?" Shaq paused, studying Derek for a moment. The cold, indifferent demeanor that once defined Derek was gone. In its place stood a confident, responsible individual who now took genuine pride in his work and respect for those around him. Shaq smiled and said, "Derek, I'm proud of you. You've shown that anyone can change if they truly want to. Keep it up." "Okay." Derek nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. His transformation wasn't about impressing Shaq or Todd. It was about realizing the significance of being a positive force within a larger team. As Derek's journey of self-improvement continued, the feedback he received from customers and coworkers alike grew overwhelmingly positive. Todd, who had been his tireless supporter, felt a deep sense of pride knowing he had played a part in helping Derek not just transform his approach to work but also his outlook on life. For Derek, the journey was more than a change in attitude, it was a journey of growth and learning. He discovered that respect and responsibility could turn any job into something meaningful. Under Todd's mentorship, Derek wasn't just an employee anymore. He had become an integral part of the positive change happening at Big Chicken. Meanwhile, Shaquille O'Neal stood in his office, gazing out at the bustling city below. But his mind was elsewhere, replaying vivid memories of the Phoenix store. What he had witnessed was more than just a field visit, it was a profound lesson. Derek's story illustrated the potential for redemption, even in individuals who seemed incapable of change. Yet, as inspiring as Derek's transformation was, Shaq couldn't ignore the systemic flaws within Big Chicken's management that had allowed such issues to persist in the first place. From negligent regional managers to the lack of proper training programs and recognition for employees like Todd, the system had created an environment where negativity could thrive. Determined to address these issues, Shaq convened a meeting with Big Chicken's senior management team. Standing before them, he began with a commanding tone, "We've done well with expansion. The numbers speak for themselves. But let me be clear. I didn't start Big Chicken just to make money. I started it to create a place where both employees and customers feel respected and valued." The room fell silent as Shaq continued, "What I witnessed in Phoenix was a wake-up call. An exceptional employee like Todd was nearly overlooked, while someone as toxic as Derek was allowed to remain unchecked for far too long. That cannot continue. Big Chicken isn't just a restaurant, it's a reflection of all of us. If we can't build a culture rooted in kindness and respect, then we've failed. Shaq then laid out a comprehensive plan to ensure the issues at Phoenix wouldn't be repeated. First, he announced a management restructuring. Regional managers would be required to spend more time working directly at stores, ensuring better oversight. Regular meetings between managers and employees would become mandatory to address concerns and gather feedback. Second, Shaq launched a company-wide initiative called Big Heart, Big Change. This campaign aimed to enhance customer experience while encouraging employees to practice kindness and unity in their daily work. Third, Shaq introduced a new online platform to highlight and celebrate outstanding employees across all locations. Stories like Todd's would be shared widely to inspire others and reinforce the idea that every contribution matters. Shaq didn't forget Derek's story either. He shared Derek's transformation with the management team, emphasizing that change is always possible with the right guidance. Derek showed us that even those we think are beyond saving can turn things around if we don't give up on them, Shaq said. It's not easy, but if Todd could see potential in Derek, then we owe it to all our employees to do the same. As Shaq reflected on his last visit to the Phoenix store, he couldn't help but smile. Derek's growth was a testament to the power of second chances, mentorship, and a supportive environment. The journey wasn't just Derek's, it was a reminder to everyone at Big Chicken that with the right guidance and a willingness to change, transformation is always within reach. And so, the story of the Phoenix store became a symbol of hope and renewal, proving that no one is truly beyond redemption.